So, Chrissie, first of all, congratulations. You got a really big job.
Yes, I do. Yes.
I'm wondering whether there's any correlation. I think it happened since I met you. Okay. It's probably not. It's probably coincidence.
I think maybe you were the part of the runway to it.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're here to talk about attention.
Yep.
So let's just start with the obvious big question. Why is everyone paying so much attention to attention at the moment?
So I think let's take a little step back, and I'll do this a few times in our questions. I think attention is really at the very beginning of what we're seeing in terms of using more human-based feedback data to understand levels of engagement around kind of the advertising we deliver, right? And it's a shift away from device-based metrics. I think that need has been a function of a few things, right? One is just the sheer volume and the fragmentation of our landscape has needed a better way of understanding what's happening throughout the funnel. And I think what you see with human, or rather attention data, is a better understanding of what's happening in that mid-funnel point, right? Because if you've got reach as your sort of first point, right, of data that says, here are all the possible people, right? Viewability says what's possible to view, right? Attention gets me into what have I seen, but then you have expression and engagement that really starts to understand how am I reacting to that content, and then ultimately, did I click on it? Did I buy it? Did I close the loop? So. But
does it genuinely, from what you've seen so far, and you've done a lot of work, is it going to make planning and buying better for the buyers?
I think if you understand that it's not the single answer.
Right.
Yeah. So there are, and maybe this comes into one of our little later questions, but the fragmentation we are seeing is almost part of the problem, because you can't pick simply one solution and say that's everything.
So when we try to measure attention, I guess, what are we actually measuring? So at SIM, we ran a very interesting salon event looking at the potential role of attention. And there was a wonderful moment when we had an opening question: what is attention? What are we trying to measure? And I thought it would be a sort of opening 3 minutes. And an hour into the 2-hour session, we still didn't have a working definition of attention. I think one person quipped that attention is whatever vendors can measure, which is helpful. But what are you measuring? What do you think you're trying to measure?
So I think generally when we're looking, it's the difference between device-based metrics, right, and increasingly human metrics. And I think what people lean towards on attention is it tends to be more of the human feedback piece. But even within that, you have galvanic response, you have eye tracking, right? And that's not the only answer. So you can say it is, your focus on a specific stimulus for a period of time, but whatever your choice of definition is, what you tend to see is the use of human feedback, right, to the stimulus.
So just make that real for us. So when you go out and start working with a vendor that helps you to measure attention, what are they actually doing? And then how do you incorporate that into planning?
Okay, so some of them are using eye tracking.
Right.
Some of them are using galvanic response. Yeah. Some of them are using JavaScript in it.
Can I ask a quick question? Does everyone know what galvanic response is? I thought not.
Sweat glands, heart rate.
So you've actually got people wired up, basically.
Some of those partners have that, yes. And so your role is to assess that, determine the validity of that, and a number of tests should be happening, right? So you can assess those differences and then say, can I scale this? Can I operationalize this? Because if I'm going to struggle with that, it's going to be a little challenging to be able to take one test and move it to the next one and really use it for planning and buying and optimization.
And again, sorry, just to make it really real, isn't this incredibly complex and expensive to do? I mean, you've just mentioned a whole set of metrics.
Yes.
Creating a large and I guess quasi-representative panel.
I think it is. Yeah, I think, and that's one of the challenges, right? We're going to see with the use of attention data is the scalability of it. And so we work with different platforms, different partners, and we do say to them, we would like you ultimately to be able to scale this, and they then come back to us and say, here are the different options we're looking at. We test all of it. But there is a point where you go, how am I going to operationalize this and ingest this into my capabilities and be able to then show better outcomes consistently?
So a very topical question. How does attention measurement impact classic reach and frequency planning? So there's obviously a huge initiative that the ANA is working on to try and help advertisers understand reach and frequency across different media. Does attention problematize what they're trying to do?
What attention does is it shines a spotlight on the need for greater rigor. And I say this to my teams again and again. It is not your silver bullet. It does not replace all things. It makes the job more, on the one hand, more challenging, but also really interesting. Because coming back to the point of understanding across the funnel, how are you ensuring, right, that you have an understanding of each of those points that you're closing, and did it drive better outcomes? So it's not the answer, but it is one aspect that does help with the mid-funnel piece. But it is about rigor.
So does that mean that reach and frequency planning is going to be fundamentally transformed during the next 5 years, or just supplemented?
Supplemented.
Okay.
It is supplemented. You still need to understand how many people am I delivering with the plan, right? But I think that the focus shifts because it says we're not trying to get every piece of content in front of all of you, right, to the same level of frequency. It's going, what do you need as an experience? What do you need? And how do I ensure that I'm shaping and crafting the right piece of content that may be representative of me, right, that may connect with me or my daughter because she is very sustainable first, right, in terms of what she seeks. So she's Generation Alpha, right? And so it's knowing it is both coming back to our fundamentals, but understanding the capabilities that are available today to make the results sharper.
So my sense is that media owners are, if not antagonistic, not overwhelmingly delighted.
I don't know if that's true.
No? Okay.
No, I don't know if that's true.
My sense is that Google and Facebook quite like it, and big TV networks really don't.
I mean, I think television networks are incredibly strong, right, at understanding innately what attention is and isn't, right? And if you look at the kind of quality of productions they come out with. So I don't think that's a fair provocation. I thought I'd try.
Because my sense, the interesting thing from all the research that we've seen about attention is that TV scores extraordinarily highly, and digital platforms have very unfavorable attention metrics. You need a lot of volume.
I think it depends. So this comes back to the attention requirement of the task, right? So I don't need you to give me a great big long explanation of how the coffee bean is made and kind of the artisanal qualities of it when I need a caffeine hit. I just need to know, where's the coffee place? It's around the corner, and you could probably give me that in half a second, right? Versus if I had been diagnosed with a condition and I didn't know much about it, and I need a much longer, thoughtful, sensitive communication that really truly considers the kind of context in which it's landing the message, right? So I think you use the platform that is right for the experience you're crafting, but it comes back to rigor. I say this to my teams all the time. Like, what is great about attention is it shines a light on the need for us to be really disciplined in the latest capabilities and then use them together in concert. It's not a silver bullet, but if you are able to do that, you are able to craft the experiences that genuinely deliver better outcomes.
So what do you think all this means for the bigger, wider world of media measurement? Do you think that going forwards, you're never going to want to look at metrics that haven't been adjusted for attention again?
I think what it means for the world of measurement is that we do this in partnership, right? That you need to have metrics that apply for both the buy side and the sell side, because you can't have one version of the truth. So it requires greater collaboration. I think, as I said, what attention does is that kind of midpoint, but I'm increasingly interested in how is expression data being used, right, as we get to more understanding of emotions, and what is that sharpening again of the ability to assess your engagement levels. It's not just about attention, but it is important. It's an important start point.
So Barb and the VAB at the moment are looking very hard at quality metrics and are trying to come up with objective ways of, I think the Barb consultation is described as defining TV-like content, which sort of seems to presuppose the answer in a way. If it's high quality, it's TV. If it's not, it's not. But what's your view on how quality and attention play together?
I think, so number one, they probably shouldn't call it TV because that does stack the deck in that favor. I prefer just the kind of definition around quality. I think you're saying...
I'm wondering how because there are some brands who clearly will care very much about being seen alongside very high quality content, and there are other brands for whom it's clearly demonstrably less of a concern. And I'm wondering how attention layers into that. Is high quality content always high attention?
So I would say if content is your queen, then context is your maketh the queen, right?
Right.
So what attention, me looking at something, it's a pretty decent, right, hook into will I have an impact? But I think it is important to start to pull in more around expression. Right, and that element of data, because then am I right in paying? Is it potentially a premium, right? And is it worth that queen maketh moment?
Okay. Final question.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about attention.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot else happening in the measurement space.
Yes.
Are there any other innovations happening at the moment?
I think we just heard some, didn't we?
We're going to hear a lot more, I think. But is there anything else really exciting at the moment?
I think innovations around the sustainability space and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that is incredibly important as we think about content that resonates, right? You look at generations Z and Alpha and how they are driven, right? And they are empathy first, sustainability and responsibility focused. Our responsibility as leaders is to craft a future that is fair and right for them. So those are the innovations that I'm leaning into.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Chrissie, thank you so much
for
making the journey.
No, thank you.
Absolute pleasure.